Do radio waves only carry music and news, or do they carry lost secrets too? When Aluki and radio operator Nelu investigated strange messages coming from an old radio, they discovered their village's dark past that no one knew about. This discovery would shock everyone. In the village of Inuit, 28-year-old technician Aluki worked the same routine every day. At the village's only radio station, he repaired televisions, phones, and, of course, radios. In this small Inuit village far from the modern world, technology was quite limited, and every device was very valuable. "Aluki, the radio's broken again," said radio operator Nelu, his friendly 35-year-old friend. "This time there's a different problem. Strange voices are coming through." When Aluki arrived at the radio station, which was the center of the village, he understood the seriousness of the situation. The old radio from the 1980s was the village's only communication device. Weather reports, emergency messages, and news from the outside world were broadcast from here. "What kind of voices?" asked Aluki as he began examining the device. "Whispers, names. They sound familiar, but I can't quite understand them," said Nelu anxiously. When Aluki turned on the radio, strange voices could indeed be heard between the normal frequencies. These voices disappeared and reappeared among the static noise, but they were clearly human voices. "This could be electrical interference," said Aluki, but he was curious inside. That night at home, Aluki studied the device's schematic. The radio appeared to be working normally, but where were those strange voices coming from? Aluki, with his modern technology knowledge, had never experienced such a situation before. When he came back to the station the next day, Nelu was excited. "Aluki, after talking with you yesterday, I left the radio on all night, and I heard names from our village." "Which names?" "Yutu, Kina, Sila. These are the names of villagers who went missing years ago." Aluki got goosebumps. These names were indeed related to the village's lost history. Aluki and Nelu began listening to the radio more carefully that morning. The voices came through more clearly at certain times, especially in the early morning hours and late at night. "Yutu, among us, too early," came a whisper from the radio. "Do you know this Yutu?" asked Aluki. Nelu nodded thoughtfully. "Yutu. He's from the stories my father told. He went missing during a hunt 30 years ago. Never found." Other voices began coming from the radio too. "Kina. Where?" "Children." "Sila. Cold. So cold." Each voice belonged to a different missing person. Aluki started taking notes. All of these names belonged to missing people that the village elders remembered. "Nelu, we need to talk to the elders about this," said Aluki. "Maybe we can find an explanation." That evening they visited 82-year-old Tulimak, the oldest person in the village. Tulimak was the person who knew the village's history best. "Ah, those names," said Tulimak with a sad expression. "Yes, I remember them all. Yutu, Kina, Sila. They disappeared in the 1990s. "How did they disappear?" asked Aluki. "We had a very harsh winter that year. Hunting groups went out, but some never returned. Search and rescue teams were sent, but no traces were found." Nelu and Aluki looked at each other. "How many people went missing?" 7 people total, at different times but during the same winter season." This information made the voices coming from the radio even more mysterious. Could these voices really be coming from the missing people? "Tulimak grandfather, was there a radio station during that period?" asked Aluki. "Yes, there was." "Actually, the radio was used very actively during that period. We were trying to communicate with the missing people." This answer gave Aluki a new idea. The next day, Aluki began searching the radio station's storage rooms. He thought he might find old devices, cables, and maybe even old recordings. Among the dusty shelves in the storage room, he found old cassettes from the 1990s. These cassettes had dates and search rescue written on them. "Nelu, look what I found," he called out. When Nelu came, Aluki was trying to get an old cassette player working. When the first cassette played, they heard familiar voices. "You two, if you can hear me, please respond. Everyone in the village is looking for you." "Who was this radio operator?" asked Aluki. "Probably Chimik. He was the radio operator of that period. He retired 10 years ago." As they continued listening to the cassettes, they found recordings of the last communications with the missing people. Each missing person had last communicated via radio, then was never heard from again. But the most surprising discovery came at the end of the cassettes. There were recordings of the missing people responding, very weak, very distant, but the voices were real. "Help, we're here. Cold. North of the village, cave." "Aluki," said Nelu excitedly, "the voices in these recordings are the same as the voices coming from the radio now." This discovery completely changed the situation. Could the radio be picking up signals from where the missing people were located? "Are there coordinates in these recordings?" asked Aluki. While searching through old files, they found a map of the 1990 winter search and rescue operations. The last known locations of the missing people were marked. "Look, they all went missing in the same area, in the mountainous region 20 kilometers north of the village. Do you know that area?" "Yes, those places are very dangerous. There are deep canyons and caves. Even the search teams couldn't fully survey them." A crazy plan began forming in Aluki's mind. "Nelu, I'm thinking of going to that area," said Aluki with determination. "That's crazy. That area is very dangerous, especially in winter. But the voices from the radio are pointing to that area. Maybe we can find traces of the missing people." Nelu hesitated, but finally decided to support his friend. "Okay, but we need to go prepared. And let's inform the village leader." Village leader Tuktu was worried when he heard their plans. "That area is considered cursed. Too many people have gone missing there." "That's exactly why we need to go," said Aluki. "With modern technology, maybe we can find the locations of the missing people." After 3 days of preparation, Aluki and Nelu set off. They had GPS, emergency radio, camping equipment, and food with them. After getting 15 kilometers away from the village, the terrain began to get difficult. The snow was thick, the weather cold, the wind sharp. But Aluki was determined. "Try the radio," he told Nelu. When Nelu turned on the emergency radio, the strange voices came through more clearly. "They're approaching. Finally. Help. Here. For so long. The voices are clearer." "We're on the right track," said Aluki excitedly. As they approached the 20th kilometer, they found the area marked on the GPS. Here there was a deep canyon and cave entrances could be seen at the edge of the canyon. "This is it," said Nelu. "But entering these caves is very risky." Aluki tried the radio at the cave entrance. The voices were now much stronger. "Inside. Deep. Help us." "We have to go into the cave," said Aluki. But what they would find when they entered the cave would be very different from what they expected. Aluki and Nelu entered the cave with flashlights. The cave was deeper and more complex than they expected. Inside it was ice cold, but sheltered from the wind. After advancing 50 meters, Aluki tripped over something. "Nelu, look at this." On the ground there were old camping supplies, sleeping bags, canned goods, and most importantly, an old radio. This could belong to the missing people," said Nelu. Aluki examined the radio. The device was in working condition, but the batteries were dead. When he put in new batteries, the radio began to work, and at that moment they experienced something shocking. They heard their own voices from the radio. "Inside. Deep. Help us." This is our voice," shouted Nelu. Aluki began to understand. Nelu, this cave works like a resonance chamber. Voices stay here and echo repeatedly. What do you mean? The missing people really stayed here. They tried to call for help with the radio, but the voices got trapped in the cave and reached the village radio for 30 years. This explanation made sense, but there was still one question. Where were the missing people? When they went deeper into the cave, they found the answer. At the deepest point of the cave, there were the skeletons of 7 people. Next to them were identification documents and personal belongings. Yutu, Kina, Sila. Read Nelu the names. "We finally found them," said Aluki with a sad voice. But their discoveries weren't over yet. Next to them were diaries where they had written their last messages. "We took shelter in the cave, but we can't find the way out. We're calling for help on the radio, but no one responds. We hope our families won't forget us." These messages told the story of the missing people's last days. They had taken shelter in the cave, but had lost the way out. Aluki and Nelu hurried back to inform the village of their discovery. Village leader Tuktu and other villagers were shocked. "We searched for them for 30 years, said old Tulimak with tears. "We finally learned where they were." The villagers were both sad and relieved to learn the fate of their missing relatives. At least the uncertainty had finally ended. "But how do we explain these radio voices?" asked the village leader. Aluki made the technical explanation. "The cave works like a natural sound amplifier. When the missing people called for help on the radio 30 years ago, their voices echoed and were stored in the cave walls. When atmospheric conditions are right, these voices can still reach the village radio." "Is this really possible?" asked Nelu. "Yes, similar situations have been seen in the scientific world too. Thanks to natural acoustic phenomena, voices can be preserved for long periods." While the villagers tried to understand this explanation, old Tulimak made a different interpretation. Maybe their spirits were trying to talk to us, to remind us that they weren't forgotten. This statement deeply affected the villagers. Whatever the scientific explanation, the missing relatives had finally found peace. "What do we do now?" asked Nelu. "We'll bring them to the village and bury them as they deserve," said Tuktu with determination. The next day, a rescue team went to the cave and brought the remains of the missing people to the village. A big ceremony was held in the village. After 30 years, the missing villagers finally returned home. All the villagers attended the ceremony, left flowers, and said prayers. Aluki and Nelu became heroes of the village during this process. Thanks to their determination and courage, the village's biggest mystery had been solved. "Is the radio working normally now?" asked the village leader. "Yes," said Aluki. "The strange voices stopped. It's like they found peace too. Indeed, strange voices no longer came from the radio. There were only normal broadcasts, music, and news. Nelu continued working at the radio station, but now with a different understanding. Every day when I turn on the radio, I remember them," he said. Aluki, after this experience, had learned that technology could connect not only to the future, but also to the past. Modern devices could sometimes reveal the most unexpected secrets. For the villagers, the most valuable gain was the end of uncertainty. They had found the answer to the question they had wondered about for 30 years. Old Tulimak said this at the end of the ceremony. "The bond between death and life is never completely broken. Our loved ones are always with us in different ways." This story was told in the village for many years, the courage story of radio repairman Aluki and operator Nelu inspired future generations. And every time they heard a radio voice, the villagers remembered that technology was not just a tool, but sometimes a bridge that brought lost stories to light. This story teaches us this: sometimes the biggest mysteries are solved with the simplest tools. When technology and courage combine, Even seemingly impossible things can become possible. And most importantly, everything that is lost is eventually found. You just need to search in the right place at the right time. Dear viewers, have there been moments in your life when technology gave you unexpected discoveries? Share your thoughts in the comments along with the lessons you draw from this mysterious story. If you liked this exciting mystery story, don't forget to hit the like button. By subscribing to our channel, you can discover more mystery and discovery stories from the depths of Inuit culture. In our next video, we'll meet again with another intriguing story. Until then, don't let the small mysteries around you escape your notice.